Hey guys, and today in this video, I'm going to be presenting you a new series, or maybe it might just be a one-time thing, but for now this is it. This is going to be 3 RPG games that have fallen off. Basically the downfall of RPG games. Now, there have been many RPG games on Roblox, and unfortunately, a lot of them have failed. In fact, most of them have failed. Now, there are still a few out there that are still minorly successful, but haven't been able to pull in the players as big as many others. But, yeah, so these are the 3 RPG games that have fallen off. And, well, let's get straight into it. Number 1 here, we got Shadovis RPG. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in the intro is that some of these games have a chance to re-flourish, and I'll explain that later, especially with the Shadovis RPG. But for now, this is what we're going to be starting with. Shadovis RPG was one of the first RPG games to blow up on Roblox. Although there have been many in years past, this genre of games have started to re-flourish on Roblox, and partly the main reason is Shadovis RPG. So, if we look at the stats, as you can see, Shadows RPG started out flourishing back in summer of 2022. As you can see, it averaged around 10k players per day, but started to mysteriously decline. Now, the reason for this is not the lack of updates. This game updated so frequently that it was basically impossible to abandon the game without new content. The problem with this game was mainly repetition of new updates. Now, there were some new things being added, and I thought they were pretty unique, like dungeons and raids even, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to keep rolling in the players, and it ended up being the downfall of the game. But it wasn't only repetition. Shadows RPG also sort of fell because of the timing of the game's release. If you look at the timing of the game's release, it was released at the end of summer of 2022. Now, this isn't fully the reason, but it is partly the reason, because many games flourish during the school year, but unfortunately, the timing of Shadows RPG's release, which was unfortunately at the beginning of the school year, meant that many players, especially in the mornings of the weekdays and during the weekdays, the game is not going to get many players. As you can see, that most of the time the game was still getting players, but it slowly started to lose players, lose attention, and not get many players, and it slowly started to fizzle out. And obviously, some of this has to do with the school year, but it was basically mainly all factors just combining with updates being repetitive and the school year, obviously schoolwork being demanding for some people, and some people were just simply losing interest with the game because of the repetition of maybe updates or just in general. This game was a fairly successful RPG game that didn't have many things wrong with it. It was just a lot of factors that combined together that ended up being the downfall of the game. But if we talk about the future of this game, as you guys know, or at least as many of you know, especially that follow my channel, Shadowvia is coming out soon, and this is Shadovis RPG's time, or should I say Drager's time, to re-flourish on Roblox. But that's it for Shadovis RPG. Here at number 2, we have Pilgrammed. Pilgrimmed was an RPG game on Roblox that was one of the more successful ones, and still manages to maintain a pretty good average number of players to this day. Even with no updates being added, this game has still managed to keep a pretty average player base on the website. But let's get into the reason why this game ended up falling off, and why there's a potential that it won't re-flourish. So let's get straight into this. When Pilgrim first released, it was a sensation on Roblox. It averaged around 10 to 20k players per day until around the beginning of March, but we'll get into that in a second. Now, when Pilgrim released, the update was huge. It was update 1, obviously, but the game was huge. There was so many things to do, so many quests to finish, so many bosses to fight, so many things to collect. A lot of people thought that this game was the next big thing on Roblox, and that, well, this would never, die. But unfortunately, it sort of did. Now, I say that lightly because it still almost averages 1,000 players. it is steadily declining, but we'll get into why that's happening in a second. Now, after Update 1 for Pilgrim, not a lot happened. And it was pretty unfortunate because this game had so much potential with what it could have done, and it was upsetting to see that none of it could have happened. If we look at the game's player base, you can see it took a big drop from the week because a lot of players were expecting new updates to come out and new items to be found and new items to use, but instead it was just bug fixes and small things being added that weren't enough to keep the players rolling in. And fortunately, there was enough to do to keep an average of 2,000 players playing for a good month or two. And it even updated again on May 2nd, where there was an actual addition of new stuff. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to keep the players rolling in because, the update wasn't that big. It was mainly a few mainly a few mini games. I don't know what I just said. Mainly a few mini games that weren't affecting your actual game and are only just there for fun. And they're mostly just cosmetics that you could get that were cool. But and this did revitalize the game a little bit. As you can see, it maintained 1,000 players for a little bit. But unfortunately, it started its ultimate decline after, I guess, a altercation within the dev group. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the Discord, but there have been, instances where, like the devs in the Discord have been calling out the devs for being bad, no updates because of this one dev, and, it's his fault and how other games are better. Do think that this game did have the potential, but it just didn't have it in them to pull it out. They could have just added small things, and, well, unfortunately, it couldn't. This game does have a chance to reflourish if there's consistent updates and consistent player base. It at least has enough to average 2K players and be a successful game. But, yeah, that's it for Pilgrim. Last but not least on our list is Voxlblade. And this game was it was a good game, but it did not last as long as many other RPG games. Now, don't get me wrong, this game was a great game. It had a lot of things to it. It was super unique. But this game actually did have a game years back, and it was Voxlblade. It was the same game. That's why some people refer to this game as Voxlblade 2, because it was the revitalizing of the original Voxlblade. When this game came out, it was almost like Pilgrim in a way where the updates were huge. There was so much to do, it's the next big thing. But unfortunately, it could not maintain releasing updates, and it just could not be consistent. And unfortunately, this game isn't done yet. I don't think it's done. I don't think they're not going to update. As you can see, they're still working on the game. It's not like they're not. They did release teasers for the next update that looks interesting. We just don't know when they're going to come out. And this game has so much to do, so many builds to be made. That's why it maintains such a huge player base for a month or two. But at the end of May and the beginning of June, it hasn't seen many players because ultimately everybody's done everything they could have done in this game, and everybody is just waiting for a new update. Now, I don't think this game has been out long enough for it to be considered fully dead yet, which means that it has a very good chance that it can revitalize again if it's just updated. Yeah, so this game does have a chance to reflourish, but that's going to be it for our list. Those were the top 3 games, RPG games that unfortunately have fallen off, but have a small chance to reflourish. If you guys enjoy the series and want another part of it, I do have a couple other games in mind that I could do, but I didn't want to include them in this video because of the potential for another video to be made on it. But yeah, so if you guys enjoy this, hit that like button down below, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.